is getting into the act, and we really want to hear President Song's views on that. Traditionally, relations between Japan and South Korea have been complex. The Japanese increasingly forward-leaning. You heard the Japanese defense minister, I think, say yesterday, calling on the international community to pay greater attention to the survival of Taiwan. So really pretty strong comments from a Japanese defense minister. President Song, we're very glad to welcome you here. Just by way of introduction, President Song is the president of the Democratic Party of Korea, which of course is the country's ruling party, which controls both the presidency of Korea and the assembly. He plays an important function in coordinating policy between the executive and the legislative branch. And for those Americans who don't follow Korean politics, it's really a role as if you had Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi rolled into one and more. Of course, President Song was also the chairperson of the National Assembly's Foreign Affairs Committee and the president of the Parliamentary Study Group on Climate Change. Here to interview him, we have Josh Rogin, well known to many of us, an old friend. He's a columnist of the global opinion section of the Washington Post, also a political analyst on CNN, has recently written a book about President Trump and President Xi, so he's well steeped in Asia policy and has written for just about every publication in the United States, including Bloomberg View, Newsweek, The Daily Beast, and others. So Josh, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Anja. Thank you, President Song, for making time so late in the evening there, or early in the morning there, I should say. And thank you to all of you out in the audience for joining us. This was originally billed as a fireside chat. Unfortunately, due to the circumstances, we can't have an actual fire, but I used the miracle of digital technology to bring you the sense of a fireside chat here. So I hope you'll feel the spirit and the warmth that's meant to convey. President Song, during the Trump administration, U.S.-South Korean bilateral relations were frankly a little bit rocky. But the two leaders did agree on one thing: the need to enthusiastically engage with North Korea in new and creative ways. Of course, it didn't work, but to be fair, nothing has. Today, the Biden administration is actually more focused on having good bilateral relations, but at the same time doesn't seem very enthusiastic about beginning a new round of diplomacy with Pyongyang. After a long policy review and some initial outreach attempts, the Biden administration's current line is that the ball is in Kim Jong-un's court. From your perspective, from your party's perspective, is there an opening right now to re-engage on diplomacy with North Korea? And if so, what should the United States and the Biden administration do?
Thank you. As you know, Mr. Trump, during his presidency, he frequently grabbing his diplomatic achievement. Without any lift economic sanction, he achieved some the stopping the further propagation of the long-range missile test and the nuclear test. During the election campaign of president, he advertised and propaganda his achievement. Without no compensation, he achieved the peace, but it is not last. Anyway, after 2017, North Korea now stopping the further propagation of the long-range missile test and nuclear test. And 4 years, no skirmish. But South Korea and the United States not compensation, any return, any kind of the humanitarian aid, including is problem. It's not lasting. If we leave this situation, my humble opinion, North Korea and preparing the further provocation, for example, the launching SLBM and the long-range test, is of course big the problem. As you know, United States mainland is exposed to the attacks, ICBM, to the country in technically war situations, North Korea. Only unique country 10 attacks mainland United States. It's a big problem in the United States, the security. So we should fix this problem two ways. Number one is to, like the hawkish fraction, the urge to like the surgical strike that can move the nuclear facility of North Korea is caused a big problem. South Korea cannot permit discussion of the war, military, the measures. We have no choice we can serving to diplomatic approach to is normalization of between North Korea and the United States. I think that North Korea can become the second Vietnam. Vietnam is 10 years war situation in the United States, Korea, but 1995, normalization of diplomatic relation with the Vietnam and the United States. The Vietnam is now de facto the military ally of the United States and deterred the expanding the China power in the southern area. Like this, North Korea can become the second Vietnam and the pro-American country. It's up to the United States. It's my humble recently we reconnect communication line between hotline, North Korea and South Korea, but for the time being, very controversial issue to America, South Korea and United States to joint military drill is going on or suspend. But as I already announced my position, I think that inevitably we can going joint military drills because it's not the motivation of the troops, just we are to simulation the computer game. It's inevitable we should to keep the readiness of the between United States and Korea is essential. We should pursue North Korea. It's not aggressive to North Korea. Okay.
I understand. Thank you. President Song, do you believe that the Biden administration should do more to convince North Korea to come back to the negotiating table? Do you believe the United States should put more concessions on the table, humanitarian aid, economic aid, sanctions relief, in order to jumpstart these negotiations?
Yes, as you know, North Korea now facing three kind of challenges. Number one is through owing to COVID-19, they are blocking the lockdown at the borderline of China. Is more kind of the trade is the stopping. It's goes big problem. Second is through periodically they repeated the natural disaster, flood and drought, and it's caused big problem. And the third is the strong economic sanction. Like the third wave is now simultaneously to imposing North Korea. North Korea is dying and very the difficult situation. The early of this year, the Kim Jong-un leader of North Korea to remarks to arduous march in 1919, you know, is very starved and for me, it's very serious that about approximately 255,000 North Korean people the starved to death. Is invoke such area. It's like this very, very hard situation. We should provide some the humanitarian aid and food and drug. According to the World Food Program, it's about the 41% of North Korean people is starved and malnutrition and pregnant women and the lactating women and under 5 children is now starving and under malnutrition. It's very reasonable situation. We should provide some security. According to the economic sanction of the resolution of United Nations 2397, the purpose of the intention of this economic sanction resolution is not to intend the adverse consequence of the lives of the ordinary people of North Korea. So I should provide more extended. We should exemption, and according to UN resolution, we extend exemption, humanitarian aid and drug and COVID-19, medical, healthcare. Also, my opinion is to reopening Kaesong industrial complex is very critical point to the building trust between United States and South Korea and North Korea.
I understand. Thank you. You mentioned opening up the Kaesong industrial complex, which has been closed for many years. The that idea, as you know, is somewhat controversial here in Washington. Has your leadership discussed that with the US government? Do you think the Biden administration is open to that? And what is the possibility that that can actually happen?
I do my best. The reason why I'm planning to going to be to Washington, D.C. I wanted to meet the high-level office of the United States and the Minister of State or the National Assembly leader. The Kaesong industrial complex is very essential role to the easy tension between the two Korea, and is very, very, very efficient way to change North Korea. Many conservative group, hawkish group of the United States and South Korea, they are very essential. The influx of the outside information go into the flow to North Korea society can change North Korea. But they are even many conservative civic group, they praise to the rubber balloon, the floating to leaflet, the spread the North Korea territory. But it's very absurd, I think. Like this, the Kaesong industrial complex, and the small, medium size of enterprise of South Korea hiring about approximately 53,000 North Korea workforce. Every day they are communicating and contact the cooperation to working and product. It's very, very good channel to the communication and influx of the outside information go into the North Korea. So infiltrate, so we can educate the pre-market system and the way of thinking. And so it's a very precious opportunity and the open window to communicate in North Korea and South Korea. So
thank you.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you very much. I understand. Do you see economic engagement with North Korea as a way to reduce Beijing's influence there? And what is your analysis of the current state of relations between North Korea and China?
Yeah. North Korea now more heavily depends on the China, not military, but also not only military, but also the economic level. About 90% of the North Korea economy depends on China. The recent 2016, we are closing the Kaesong industrial complex. More they depend on borderline of China. They are hiring the North Korea, the workforce. It's a big problem. We are very concerned that North Korea, the gradually subordinate country to China, is a big problem. If we are reopening Kaesong industrial complex, is some alternatives, not depends on the China, more to collaborate with South Korea and United States. If the resumption of the Kaesong industrial complex, at the time, the United States enterprise to invest in that area. So I imagine, can you imagine, if the McDonald's store in the located Kaesong industrial complex is the strong, symbolic sign, United States not intention to invade North Korea. North Korea is paranoid. They are very scared to the bombardment from the United States. We are all South Korea, United States in the rhetoric. We have no intention to invade North Korea, but they cannot trust this. They are all American. They assume the rehearsal of the invading the war. They are denounced to the joint military exercise every year. So if we invest McDonald's, the store in the located in Kaesong in the complex North Korea territory, it's a strong symbolic symbol. We have no intention to invade North Korea. We can guarantee the North Korea.
Thank you. President Song, recently, Kim Yo-jong, the sister of Kim Jong-un, said that South Korea should cancel or at least reduce its upcoming military drills with the United States. Do you think that's a good idea? And if not, is there a chance that this new opening for diplomacy could end before it can truly begin?
as you know, nowadays about 5 times they exchange letters from Kim Jong-un and the President Moon Jae-in. There's friendly letters they can trust, and finally they reopening communication line between hotline between North and South Korea. But recently, Kim Yo-jong is strong the warning to stopping the military joint exercise. But my humble opinion, we cannot, we should going on, because it's not the invading the scenario is not just we are protecting our country and so not the peace, to keep the peace, and we are defense the readiness. So we should persuade North Korea also, but we can understand the North Korea perspective. North Korea, as you know, about the very low economic scale. So the expenditure of military is very low, about the 150 is very large. So they have no approach to the military exercise, the equivalent of the joint military exercise United States and Korea, because they have no tank oil, and the jet oil is banning from the economic sanction. They have no approach training to exercise the comparable scale of the military exercise is impossible. Reason why North Korea, they are developing asymmetric the strategy, for example, the missiles and the submarine and the nuclear weapons. They have no the capability to equivalent of the conventional weapon the level. So if the Korea and the United States, the joint military the exercise at that time, North Korea very nervous and paranoid. So we should persuade, we have no intention. It's true, like the building trust is very important. So reason why I suggest to reopening Kaesong Industrial Complex is very strong, the momentum. They are invite the negotiation table, the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula.
Thank you. President Song, let me ask you about South Korean politics. You have a presidential election coming up next year, and maybe that means that the Moon administration is in a rush, has to show some progress with North Korea. But in Washington, it doesn't seem like the Biden administration is in a rush. So how do you view that difference between the Moon administration and the Biden administration in terms of urgency and speed?
Yes, it's a good question. But I think the Biden administration is also the same problem. It's the next year in November, and the midterm election is coming. So Biden has no approach, no the enough time. To Biden have some needs the diplomatic achievement. Biden administration recently withdrew from Afghanistan, American troops. It's caused a big problem, I think. The Taliban is occupied all the Afghanistan mainland is covered. It's caused a big problem. But I think where's which President Biden is some propaganda achievement of diplomacy. It's North Korea is very good, I think.
I understand. Thank you. Can you tell us who's going to win the next South Korean presidential election, and how will that change the policy towards North Korea?
Absolutely. Our party have a good opportunity, I think. As you know, in Korea, the politics, according to statistics, the liberal groups, the 10 years, they take power, and after that 10 years, they get circulation. So the Lee Myung-bak 5 years, Park-geun-hye 4 years. After that, Moon Jae-in the 5 years, and we are successful will be take power. I think as you know, in South Korea National Assembly, we are majority is ruling power. And I belong to Democratic Party. We are the dismissal the National Assembly. The tenure of this National Assembly about after next year, the March 9, the president election, after that, 2 years, the terms. So inevitably a cohabitation between the new president and the National Assembly. So if we are it's my responsibility to the presidential victory. I strong confidence we can win.
Thank you very much. I understand. President Song, for many here in Washington, the bilateral relationship is becoming more and more about how to deal with a rising China. And Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman visited Seoul before making her recent trip to China. What did she tell you, your government and your party about that issue, and how do you see U.S.-South Korean cooperation related to China developing in the near future?
It's a very sensitive problem. As you know, geopolitically, Korea, the peninsula location is very, very sensitive position. We are inevitably collaborate with the China, but if we are choose which side, China and the United States, we have no choice to choose the United States. And the United States and Korea is the linchpin, the strong ironclad ally to keep the prosperity and the peace in Northeast area. So we are pursue the same value, the market system and the human rights and the freedom of speech. But my humble opinion, the Biden administration, the three aspects of the approach to China. Number one is to compete with the edge technology competition and the semiconductor and many bio industry. And the second side is to compete. Just against about the human rights, abuse of the human rights and the Xinjiang Uyghur problem and yes. Hong Kong protest, Hong Kong democracy problem. They strongly against to such kind of the abuse of human rights. And the third aspect is to close collaborate with the solving North Korea nuclear issue and the terrorism and the pandemic, COVID-19, also the climate change. So I think the paradigm is very shifted. Quite different the Soviet Union and the United States and called the war area, because the climate change is very, very strong crisis in the humankind. I think the human civilization, humankind, not consistently like this. I have no confidence my children go to marry and they have a children. It's Earth, it's global crisis. We are crossroads. Earth is going to the gold star and Venus or Mars. The global warming is coming. Like the climate change is big problem, cause big problem. So we should collaborate, not America first, not China first. So my opinion, South Korea strongly collaborate with United States, but we are checking the China power. But it's the reason why we are through the normalization of the diplomatic relations United States and North Korea. North Korea is to legitimize the military competition in this area. So if the diplomatic relationship between North Korea and the United States is the checking and the balance and the Northeast Asia is very critical point.
I understand. Thank you so much. I'll turn it back to Anja now to moderate a couple of audience questions. Back to you, Anja.
Great. Thank you so much, Josh. And it clearly shows how closely you follow this region. President Song, thank you for being with us. And I want to thank you in particular for doing this session in English. I certainly couldn't do it in Korean, so we're extremely grateful to you. We know that's much more difficult. I have a question now from Paul Becerra, who's in the audience.
President, thank you for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure. Building on Josh's last question, we've heard a lot today about the Quad and what its future may involve. Is the Quad an effort that you could envision South Korea participating in? And more particularly, what might that role entail or include? Thank you.
I think the South Korea participate the Quad, but is very cautious and very sensitive. And as you know, we can collaborate with the Quad country, 4 countries, to the free navigation and strait, the Taiwan Strait, also many Indo-Pacific Ocean. We can help with preventing the smuggling and the spreading of the some many illegal activities and some also we at the combat climate change is no problem. But China is very sensitive and nervous in the Quad. They are misunderstanding. Quad is the developing like the NATO in European the country NATO. But I think that we can substantially collaborate with the Quad, but is officially participate Quad is caused the misunderstanding and China. So we are now for the time being we are very cautious.
Thank you very much. And I may just take the moderator's prerogative and ask you the last question, President Song, and that is, there's so much collaboration between the United States and Korea, also Japan, on technologies. And there's an increasing feeling in the United States that one of the things we should do to compete effectively with China is, for example, to have similar export controls. So where Korea, Japan, the US, maybe the Netherlands, certain others would say, hey, there's some certain advanced tools, especially with respect to semiconductors, some with respect to artificial intelligence, that we're jointly going to agree not to sell to China. I know that's very difficult for Korea, but do you think any accord like that might be possible?
Case by case is very different. As you know, we are first the trade partner is China. Is about the approximately 25% of the aggregation of the trade amount is to depends on China and Hong Kong and Taiwan. So recently, the United States is to prohibit the export from the, for example, EUV from Netherlands to going to China. It's cost problem, but we can use this opportunity. South Korea semiconductor company is more to the developing. I'm sorry.
No problem.
But I don't know exactly, but we can compromise in China and the United States because it's quite different. The Soviet Union and the United States at the time is a block economy, not communicated, not the evolving so each other. But now China and the United States is closely collaborate with the mutual investment two countries. Mm-hmm. There is all the world market economy is the integrated one economy. So it's too isolated and party is very impossible. So we can, my opinion is to United States should negotiate with China to fix the trade dispute.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you joining us for the remarks. It's very important to hear from our friends in Korea. Josh, thank you for masterful moderating. Now I will leave it there. I'm going to make some closing remarks now for our audience, but thank you to our last two speakers of the day.